The morning sun had barely climbed over the ridge when Ethan Calloway spotted the wagon stranded along the dusty road that curled through the heart of Willow Range. He nearly passed by. It wasn't unusual to see travelers resting at dawn, but something about the stillness around the wagon tugged at him, a quiet tug like a voice carried on wind. Ethan reined in his horse and approached slowly. That's when he saw her. A young woman sat on the ground, her dress torn at the hem, her hair messy in a way that suggested a full night of worry rather than sleep. 2 children were huddled beneath her arms, their eyes wide, tired, and much too old for their age. Ethan's stomach tightened. "Ma'am. You all right?" he called out gently. She looked up, startled, then relieved, then embarrassed in the span of a heartbeat. "Our horse collapsed in the night," she said softly. We didn't know who else might come down this road." Ethan dismounted, giving a small nod. The children clung to her tighter. "I'm Ethan," he offered. "Where are you headed?" The woman hesitated, chewing the inside of her cheek. "Town," she whispered. "I'm Clara, and these are my children, Will and Sarah. We just need to get to town." Ethan glanced at the sunlit road, then at their trembling hands. Something unspoken rested beneath her words, something that made her voice tremble even when her face tried to stay strong. "Take us to town?" she asked again. Ethan set his hat back on his head, studied her for a moment, and then spoke the words without thinking, words that surprised even him, "Only if you promise to return." She blinked, confused. "Return?" "Home," Ethan said. "Or whatever place your heart calls home. Doesn't have to be the same one you came from. Just don't go somewhere you can't come back from." Clara looked away quickly, but not before Ethan saw the fear in her eyes. He knew that look. Running, not toward something, but away from something else. So he hitched their wagon to his own horse, helped them climb aboard, and they set off down the long trail toward Willow Creek town. At first, no one spoke. Dust rose behind them in soft clouds, settling on their clothes like powdered memory. After a few miles, Sarah, a tiny thing with dark hair and a stubborn chin, asked, "Mister, why do you live out here all by yourself?" Ethan hesitated. He hadn't told that story in years. "Just like the quiet, I guess." Clara gave him a knowing look that said she didn't believe a word of it, but she didn't press. Hours passed. The children dozed in the back while Clara sat beside Ethan. Eventually, the truth slipped out of her in fragile pieces. Her husband had passed a year ago, and since then, she had moved from relative to relative, town to town, trying to find a place that felt safe. "People mean well," she said with a strained smile, "but they get tired of helping. And I get tired of needing help." Ethan listened quietly. "Where were you headed before the horse collapsed?" he asked. Clara's hands fidgeted in her lap. "I don't know," she admitted. "Somewhere better. Somewhere not here." Ethan gave a thoughtful hum. "Sometimes better isn't farther," he said. "Sometimes it's closer than you think." Clara looked at him as though he were speaking of a world she didn't believe existed anymore. As the wagon rattled onward, Ethan found himself warming to the presence of the children. Little Will kept asking about every cactus, rock, and jackrabbit they passed, while Sarah rested her head on Ethan's coat like he'd known her for years. Clara watched all of it with quiet gratitude, and something else, something like hope, though she didn't dare call it that yet. But life has a way of checking your hope just when you start to feel it. A sudden crack echoed down the trail, sharp, violent, unmistakable. Gunshot. Ethan yanked the reins and shielded the family behind him. 2 rough-looking men stepped out from behind an outcrop, guns drawn, their faces covered with faded bandanas. "Wagon looks heavy," one sneered. "Hand it over." Ethan had dealt with men like them before. Wandering thieves who fed on desperation. But now he wasn't alone, he had lives behind him depending on him. "We got kids," Ethan warned, pushing Clara and the children behind the wagon. "Then this'll be quick," the taller bandit snarled. Tension crackled in the hot air. Ethan didn't want to fight, but he knew he wouldn't back down. He stepped forward, hands open but firm. "Take the wagon," he said steadily, "but let the family walk away." Clara's breath caught. The bandits looked at one another and laughed. "You're willing to give up everything for strangers?" Ethan didn't flinch. "Yeah," he said. "I am." The shorter bandit spat into the dirt. "Crazy fool." Then something unexpected happened. Will stepped out from behind his mother, shaking, terrified, but determined, and grabbed Ethan's coat, pulling him back protectively. "Don't hurt him," the boy shouted. The bandits froze. A child defending a grown man wasn't something they were used to. Sarah joined her brother, glaring through tears. "Please," she cried. Clara rushed to pull them back, but the moment had already shifted. The taller bandit lowered his gun, uncomfortable. "Let's just go," he muttered. "Ain't worth this." The other grumbled but followed. Within seconds, the men vanished over the ridge. Clara collapsed against the wagon, shaking. Ethan exhaled slowly, his hands trembling for the first time. Will wiped his eyes and looked up at him. "You saved us," he whispered. Ethan crouched down. "You saved me too, kid." The journey to town continued, but something in the wagon had changed. A bond had formed, fragile but real, in the shadow of danger. When Willow Creek town finally came into sight, a cluster of wooden buildings wrapped in the glow of late afternoon, Clara exhaled deeply, like she'd been holding her breath for years. Ethan helped the children down and guided Clara toward the inn. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything." Ethan nodded. "Just keep your promise." Clara frowned. "Promise?" "To return," Ethan reminded her gently. Clara looked around the town square, the people bustling, the warmth spilling from the saloon windows, the laughter of children running past, and for the first time in a long while, she realized she had a choice. She didn't have to keep running. She didn't have to keep surviving alone. She could stay. She could breathe. She could rebuild. A tear slid down her cheek before she managed to whisper, maybe this could be home." Ethan smiled, a small, quiet smile that reached his eyes. He tipped his hat and turned to leave. But Sarah tugged on his sleeve. "Are you coming back too?" she asked shyly. Ethan paused. He hadn't expected the question to hit so deeply. Clara watched him, her expression soft, uncertain, hopeful. After a long moment, Ethan crouched to Sarah's level. "If you want me to," he said. Sarah nodded vigorously, and Will chimed in with a grin. Clara's eyes shimmered. "Ethan," she said gently, "we'd like that." And suddenly, the lonely road Ethan had spent years riding didn't feel so lonely anymore. Over the next few days, Clara found work at the town bakery, where the owner welcomed her with open arms. The children started attending the small schoolhouse near the riverbank, making friends faster than Clara could keep up with the stories they brought home. Ethan stayed close, not intruding, but present, like a steady oak tree offering shade until a sapling could stand tall on its own. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Clara found him repairing her wagon outside the inn. "You know," she said softly, "I think I finally understand your question." Ethan glanced up. "Which one?" "Return," she whispered. "You weren't talking about a place. You meant, return to myself." Ethan set down his tools, wiped his hands on his jeans, and gave her that same quiet, steady look. "Everyone deserves a place where they can do that." Clara stepped closer. "You gave us that chance." "You took it yourself," he corrected gently. "I just showed the road." They stood in the fading light, the warm glow of windows flickering behind them, the laughter of children carrying on the breeze. For the first time in a long stretch of hard years, Clara felt whole. She had arrived in town a frightened, exhausted widow with no plan and no hope, but she had returned to something far greater. She had returned to the possibility of a life rebuilt. A heart reopened. A future worth staying for. And Ethan? He had found something too. Not love, not yet, but something just as powerful. Purpose. Connection. A reason to ride into town instead of away from it. Months later, folks in Willow Creek would still talk about the day the quiet rancher brought in the woman with the tired eyes and the 2 brave children. They'd say it was the start of something good, something rare. Something that reminded everyone that small acts of kindness could change the course of a life. Or 3. And sometimes, if you were lucky, those lives changed yours right back. Because in the end, it wasn't the wagon or the journey or even the danger on the trail that made their story remarkable. It was a single moment, a simple, unexpected question answered with a promise, "Take us to town. Only if you promise to return." And they did. All of them. In more ways than one. And that return became the beginning of everything that followed, a testament to the quiet power of compassion, the courage it takes to stop running, and the beautiful truth that sometimes the road away from the past leads you straight toward home.